Not really sure how best to tell this story, so I'll post it in small chunks at a time. I guess. Around 13 or 14 at the time. Walk dogs on the same route around the village. Always walk down a real long lane that stretched between backyards of opposite houses. Garages and sheds ran along one side, brick walls along the other. Halfway through the lane was an old run-down car with a little black dome thing on the dashboard. Said dome was constantly blinking red, either an alarm or a camera, I imagine. In front of the car was a real dilapidated horse box. Picked not the same one, but very similar. Rusted to all hell, holes and open areas were heavily boarded up with wood and sheet metal. Every time I walked down this lane, dogs would constantly run to the horse box and frantically start sniffing around it and consistently pull back on the leash as I'd try and pull them away. Thought nothing of it until I noticed other dogs would behave the same way around it. Horse box began to gain my curiosity. Began to take dogs out more often just to see if they'd eventually lose interest in the horse box. They didn't. If anything, they got more persistent, would start dragging me towards it, sometimes growl at it or me when I'd try and pull them away. Decided to try and take a look for myself, wouldn't hurt. Started circling the box as best I could, looking for some kind of opening. I noticed a relatively loose piece of wood towards the top of the box, being held in place by a couple of rusty nails. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tried to get a peek inside by pulling the wood just a little. Decided probably not the best idea after I heard footsteps coming towards the gate beside the box. Yanked the dogs away and hurried to the end of the lane. Could have been nothing, didn't bother looking back. Few days passed and I needed to take another look. Horse box now had my attention. Started going out with the dogs later in the evening, quieter time, less likely to be interrupted, I thought. Sun was setting earlier, this was late summer, so days began getting shorter, but had plenty of daylight to start snooping. So I took the dogs on their walk, same route, just at a different time. Started coming up towards the lane, but my plans changed when I saw some old man stood directly in front of the horse box, just staring at it. He had a dog with him, and it was the first dog I'd seen which hadn't gone ape shit when next to said horse box. Thought to myself maybe it was just one big coincidence that every dog I'd seen acted the same way. Continued to watch the fella from afar, pretended to pick up dog shit so I'd look relatively normal if he took a glance at me and saw me hanging around. The old man then began toying with the horse box, touching the wood, adjusting the sheet metal. He stood doing this for a while, hell I'm not even sure how long as I was stood there picking up dog shit. After a while he just stood and stared at it for several more minutes before opening the gate beside it and walking into his backyard. That makes a whole lot of sense, I thought, explains why the dog wasn't showing any interest with the thing. More days passed and the summer break was slowly coming to a close. Decided to make it my mission to now find out what was inside the horse box that got the dogs all spooked before school started again. Sun probably set around 7 p.m. and I decided to go and have another look. I grabbed a flashlight and headed out. I left the dogs at home this time. So the time had come, I thought. No pussyfooting around it this time. No dogs. No distractions. Come up to the horse box never really affected me in any way like it did with dogs. Whole different story when it's dark, no street lamps around, and the only light illuminating this piece of junk was a dim flashlight. Actually started feeling a little nauseous, still not quite sure whether it was this inanimate object that was causing me to feel this way, or me thinking that maybe I was breaking the law in some way. Decided to nut up and circled the thing, but couldn't find the loose wood I'd moved about a week or so ago. Old man had clearly made some improvements. There was more nails in the wood. More sheet metal had been applied. Something was in this box that he didn't want people to see. His defense had leveled up tenfold. Started thinking to myself that maybe I wasn't best equipped for such a task, and maybe I'd need some tools to get the job done. Those thoughts were quickly diminished when I noticed that an area had been untouched by Tim Allen from Home Improvement. I managed to pull myself up to the open part of the box by positioning myself awkwardly on the wheel arch. Probably should have used a headlamp or something in hindsight, because trying to keep myself balanced, upright and try and pull myself up to eye level with the open area was a chore with one free hand, flashlight at the ready in the other. Alas, I stabilized myself in a comfortable position and got my light to shine inside. Not sure if it was because I was elevated, but some very bizarre smell which I still to this day can't put my finger suddenly hit me. A stench I'd never smelled before now hit me like a train. I guess this was why the dogs went bananas around the thing. I still couldn't make out what was inside, so I tried to lift myself higher. In doing so, I pulled a piece of wood from the box, dropped my flashlight inside and slipped. So the fall clearly made a whole lot of noise, but not enough to disturb the peace, I'd say. But being the ignorant, set in my ways kinda guy that I am, I completely forgot about the little blinking red light in the car beside the box. Pretty sure it was a camera. So I got back up and went for another look. Lo and behold, the footsteps started coming. And they sounded in a hurry. I started to panic and didn't know what to do or where to go. I kind of just froze. The gate behind me swung open and in an instant I was now face to face with the guy. He was old. Like he looked real old. Leathery skin, a dirty mustache, deep, dark circles under his eyes. He didn't say a word. He grabbed me by both shoulders and somewhat gently pushed me against a horse box. With my back up against it, I had nowhere to look but straight at him. It didn't even feel as though he was looking at me. I know it sounds cliché, but it did feel like he was looking right through me, like the only thing he could see was the horse box. He stood like this for several seconds before pulling out some kind of disposable camera and taking a snapshot of what must have been a very pale face of mine. He then fixed his focus to actually look at me and said something along the lines of silly boy or stupid boy, and he shook his head. Pretty sure he went to say something else as he looked at his disposable camera, but I decided I wasn't in the mood to make small talk and I legged it back down the lane, back the way I came. Fair to say I didn't want to go back to this lane, and I avoided it religiously for several months. Just after Christmas I decided to take an early morning walk down the lane, just to see if Tim Allen had made any more improvements. The horse box was nowhere to be seen, and neither was the car with the camera alarm. I felt as though a weight had been lifted off my chest, knowing this old guy had relocated his creepy junk somewhere else. I still didn't like the thought of this guy potentially having a photograph of me lying around somewhere, but the thought of him being out of the area was good enough. I never saw the old guy again, nor did I ever see that horse box again, and walking my dogs was far easier without them being constantly distracted by it. Around the end of January, I was taking a walk with a friend to the park, and we took the lane as a shortcut. The entire backyard area of Horse Box House was cornered off with police tape. And several officers were stood around the area. I looked into the yard, and there were men in white hazmat suits walking up and down his garden, and several holes had been dug along the patch of grass. I don't know where the old man went, and I still to this day don't know what was going on in his backyard, and I don't think I'll ever find out. Finn. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe.